When the Horus Heresy finally ends, the galaxy expects silence, recovery, and slow rebuilding, because the greatest civil war in human history is finally over and the traitor fleets are broken. Terra still stands scarred but unbroken. The Emperor remains upon the Golden Throne, and to most of humanity, it feels like survival itself has been secured. Yet far beyond celebration or relief, something far more dangerous begins to unfold quietly, without announcement or warning. The Astronomican, the vast psychic beacon that has guided humanity through the warp for millennia, does not burn as brightly as it once did. At first, the change is subtle, almost ignorable, manifesting only as navigational inconsistencies and delayed arrivals. Fleet captains dismiss it as post-war instability, navigators struggle to articulate what they are sensing, and astropaths describe their messages as stretched, distorted, and strangely incomplete. Then the delays grow longer, the errors more severe, and entire fleets begin to vanish between departure and arrival. Worlds wait for supply convoys that never come, while reinforcements promised during the heresy fail to appear years later, if at all. Slowly, an unthinkable truth emerges across the stars. The Astronomican is not recovering. It is failing. And when it finally goes dark, humanity does not scream. It does not even realize what has been lost. Because the Imperium of Man was never held together by belief, ideology, or even force of arms, but by something far more fragile, the ability to move, communicate, and exist as a single civilization across an uncaring galaxy. When that light dies, the Imperium does not fall instantly. It begins to drift apart. With the Astronomican gone, warp travel becomes an act of blind desperation rather than calculated navigation. Routes once mapped and reinforced by centuries of experience collapse overnight, leaving void captains forced to choose between remaining stranded or gambling their crews and cargo on uncharted currents. Even successful jumps become unpredictable, with ships emerging decades or centuries displaced, arriving to destinations that no longer resemble the worlds they left behind. Astropathic communication suffers the same fate, fragmenting into unreliable echoes that arrive distorted or not at all. A warning sent from a dying system might reach its neighbors long after the world has already been stripped bare, turning urgent pleas into historical records of extinction. The Imperium's greatest strength, its ability to coordinate across impossible distances, evaporates almost immediately. Administrators on distant worlds continue issuing reports to Terra, unaware that no one will ever read them. Sector commands still follow Imperial doctrine, even as they operate in complete isolation from any higher authority. Slowly, painfully, the realization spreads that the Imperium is no longer a functioning entity, but a memory sustained by habit and denial. Without the Astronomican, there is no shared strategic picture of the galaxy, no central command capable of reacting to threats, and no guarantee that even neighboring systems can support one another. Humanity has not been defeated in battle, but it has lost the ability to act as a unified force, and in the void between stars, that weakness is fatal. Terra itself does not immediately descend into chaos, but its survival comes at a terrible price. The Sol system remains heavily defended, its fleets and fortifications forming a near-impenetrable bastion, yet that strength is now locked in place. Fleets that leave may never return, and those that remain cannot project power beyond a shrinking sphere of influence. Mars suffers alongside Terra, cut off from its vast network of forge worlds, its supply line severed and its industrial reach reduced to whatever lies within safe, local space. Knowledge once shared across the Imperium becomes hoarded, fragmented, and incomplete, accelerating technological stagnation rather than preventing it. The High Lords of Terra continue to rule in name, issuing decrees and mobilization orders that never reach their intended recipients. The heart of the Imperium still beats, but its arteries have been severed, turning the capital of mankind into a strategic dead end rather than a seat of power. For the first time, Terra is forced to confront a reality it was never designed to face. It can endure, but it cannot lead, and beyond the Sol system, humanity begins to move forward without it. Across the galaxy, isolated human worlds adapt according to their circumstances, their resources, and their fears. Some retreat inward, fortifying their systems and abandoning warp travel entirely, choosing stagnation over annihilation. These worlds survive by becoming static, unchanged for centuries, their populations shrinking but enduring behind layers of defense. Others take the opposite path, embracing risk and independence as necessity rather than choice. Rogue fleets form loose networks of trade and intelligence, relying on trial, error, and sacrifice to maintain limited interstellar contact. Losses are catastrophic, but progress continues in fragmented, uneven bursts. In many regions, planetary governors assume absolute authority, reshaping law, culture, and identity to suit survival rather than imperial doctrine. The Imperium becomes legend rather than government, a half-remembered idea of unity from a distant past. Without oversight, forbidden sciences re-emerge, not out of rebellion but desperation. Humanity does not collapse into extinction, but it diverges, evolving into countless variations shaped by isolation rather than cooperation. The species survives, but it is no longer singular, and that fragmentation leaves it vulnerable to forces that do not require unity to dominate. Today, as human coordination collapses, the warp grows increasingly unstable, no longer influenced by the Astronomican's presence. Storms expand, roots dissolve, and regions once considered safe vanish behind curtains of unreality. Without rapid response fleets or coordinated resistance, incursions that would once have been contained now spread unchecked. Entire systems fall not because they are weak, but because no one comes to help them. Fortress worlds fight on in isolation until resources fail, while frontier systems disappear so quickly that their loss is never recorded. The long war loses its structure, becoming a scattered series of feeding grounds rather than a defined conflict. Resistance continues, but it is localized and unsustainable, unable to adapt at the same scale as the threats it faces. Humanity still fights, but it does so alone, fragmented, and increasingly outmatched. Yet even as chaos spreads, it does not become the sole master of the galaxy, because something far more indifferent is already approaching. The Tyranids enter a galaxy that cannot detect them in time to respond. Without shared intelligence or early warning networks, hive fleets descend upon isolated systems without resistance, consuming entire regions before neighboring worlds even understand what has happened. Tactics once developed through shared experience are impossible to replicate, forcing each world to relearn the same lessons at the cost of extinction. With no Astronomican influence, Tyranid navigation through the warp becomes more efficient, their adaptation cycles accelerating as biomass consumption increases. Human enclaves vanish without record, their destruction marked only by drifting debris and dead stars. Some worlds survive by chance, hidden behind anomalies or forgotten routes, but most do not. Humanity no longer shapes the fate of the galaxy. It reacts to it, always too late, always unprepared. The Eldar recognize the shift immediately, using humanity's blindness to maneuver freely, reclaim ancient pathways, and manipulate isolated regions with precision. Necron dynasties awaken without opposition, expanding methodically into territories once defended by imperial presence alone. Orc empires swell unchecked, their wars growing larger and more destructive without crusades to suppress them. The galaxy does not descend into chaos, but into a new balance where power is defined by resilience rather than unity. Humanity becomes one faction among many rather than the dominant force it once was, its survival dependent on luck, adaptation, and isolation rather than strength. This is how the Imperium truly ends, not in a final stand or catastrophic defeat, but in gradual irrelevance. Without the Astronomican, there is no Imperium, only scattered human civilizations struggling to survive in a galaxy that no longer waits for them. Some endure. Some evolve. Most vanish without record. The light that once unified humanity was never just a beacon, but the foundation of an empire stretched beyond natural limits. When it disappeared, so did mankind's dominance of the stars, leaving behind a galaxy that moved on without them. Not with an ending, but with silence.